Welcome, dear listeners, to Sundust Short Horror Stories, where the shadows of the past creep into the quiet corners of your night. I'm your host, bringing you tales plucked from the dust of forgotten graves, stories that remind us how thin the line can be between life and the eternal dark. Tonight's chill comes from a time not so long ago. It's called Ring Bell of Still Alive, when medicine was more guesswork than science, and death wasn't always as final as it seemed in the days of our grandparents or perhaps great-grandparents. The fear of being buried alive haunted entire communities. Doctors had no machines to monitor hearts or brains. They relied on mirrors held to lips, feathers under noses, or simply waiting for the body to grow cold. Mistakes happened, terrible, unimaginable mistakes. To ease this dread, a grim precaution became common in some rural places. A small bell mounted above the grave, connected by a thin string that ran through a hole in the coffin lid and into the hand of the deceased. If the corpse awoke in that suffocating darkness, they could pull the string, ring the bell, cry out to the living, "I'm still here." My grandfather shared this next tale with me when I was young, a story from his own childhood that he swore was true. It's about his Aunt Jane and a bell that rang too late. Years ago, in a quiet countryside, much like the one my grandfather grew up in, things were far simpler and far more unforgiving than today. There were no hospitals with bright lights and beeping monitors, no advanced tests to confirm the end of life. When someone fell ill, families cared for them at home, and death often came swiftly and without warning. That's what happened to Aunt Jane. She was only 33, full of life one week and stricken with a sudden, fierce sickness the next. A raging fever gripped her, sapping her strength day by day. After about a week, her breathing grew shallow, then stopped altogether. Her family, hearts heavy with grief, checked for any sign of life, but found none. The local doctor was summoned. He examined her carefully, felt for a pulse, held a mirror to her lips, and pronounced her dead. Jane was sent to the undertaker, who prepared her body with quiet respect, washing her, dressing her in her finest clothes, laying her in a simple wooden casket lined with faded satin. A few days later, the funeral came and went under a gray sky. Mourners gathered at the small family plot in the local cemetery, said their tearful goodbyes, and lowered her into the earth. But in those days, out of caution and that lingering fear, a safety measure was often added. A bell was placed atop a short post beside the fresh tombstone. A thin string was threaded through a small hole drilled in the coffin lid down into the grave and gently tied around Jane's wrist or placed in her cold hand. If by some cruel twist of fate she wasn't truly gone, she could tug that string, the bell would ring, help would come rushing. The very next day, as my grandfather played near the edge of town, a friend came running up to him, breathless and wide-eyed. "The bell, it's ringing. Aunt Jane's bell." Grandfather's blood turned to ice. He bolted home to tell his parents. They didn't hesitate. Grabbing shovels, they raced to the cemetery with a handful of neighbors in tow, and there it was, the faint, frantic tinkling of that bell, carried on the wind like a desperate plea. They fell to their knees in the soft dirt, digging furiously. Sweat poured down their faces as they uncovered the coffin and pried open the lid. There lay Aunt Jane, but not peacefully. Her eyes were wide open, frozen in a stare of pure, unimaginable terror. Her face was twisted in agony, lips pulled back in a silent scream. Deep, bloody scratches marred the inside of the coffin lid, frantic gouges from her fingernails as she clawed desperately for freedom. The string lay tangled around her fingers, pulled taut in her final moments. She had been buried alive. Waking in that pitch-black box, lungs burning for air, she must have thrashed and pulled the bell in panic. It rang. But no one heard soon enough. By the time rescuers arrived, the last whisper of oxygen had fled and Jane had slipped away. This time, forever. Grandfather said the family never spoke of it again, but the story lingered like a shadow. Some say on quiet nights, if you pass an old cemetery, you might still hear a faint bell, ringing from a grave long forgotten. Is it the wind, or someone reaching out from the other side begging? Ring the bell, if still alive. Thank you for joining me in the Sundust tonight. Sleep well, if you can. Until next time. Welcome to Sundust Short Horror Stories, where we share true tales that linger long after the telling. I'm your host, bringing you quick bursts of real-life dread from ordinary folks who brushed against something they can't explain. Tonight's story comes from Beckley, West Virginia, a small city where the streetlights end and the woods begin. It's called the Beckley Devil. Turn the volume up just enough to hear the night outside your window. And let's start. I live in Beckley, West Virginia. It's a small city, sure, but the woods press right up against us. Deer wander the streets in daylight, and after dark, the raccoons and opossums come out to raid trash cans like they own the place. We're used to it. Nobody thinks twice. But late last spring, something else started walking our neighborhoods in the dead of night around 2:30 or 3 a.m. At first, people thought it was a bare, heavy, deliberate footsteps thudding past bedroom windows. Long claws scratching, citing deep, rasping breaths right outside the house. Calls started flooding the police non-emergency line. Folks were scared, but not panicked yet. Then my buddy Johnny decided to get proof. He set up trail cameras all over the neighborhood, one in his backyard, one in my front yard, and one behind the little corner convenience store. He caught it, clear as day on the store camera. We gathered around his phone, speechless. The thing was maybe 7 feet tall, easily 300 pounds, covered head to toe in thick matted fur. It had a long, shaggy tail that dragged the ground in its face. God, its face was wrong. Part wolf, snout, teeth, yellow eyes, but the shape of the head and the way it moved was almost human. It wasn't destroying anything. No tipped trash cans, no broken fences, no scratched up cars. It just wandered, poked around yards, peered in windows, then moved on. We couldn't figure out what it wanted. Until the death started. Every house it visited, someone inside died soon after. Always natural causes. An elderly woman drifted away in her sleep. An older man had a massive heart attack. A middle-aged woman suffered a sudden stroke. No violence, no struggle, just gone. Word spread fast. We started calling it the Beckley Devil. After Johnny's video leaked online, the whole town went on edge. People stayed up all night with porch lights blazing, hoping for a glimpse. Some rigged traps, deadfalls, snares, even bear traps borrowed from hunting cabins. A few loaded shotguns and waited on their front steps. One night it showed itself to a guy named Earl down on Harper Road. He charged out with his 12 gauge, ready to end it. Got within 20 feet, the devil stopped, arched its back like a cat, and let loose a growl, low, guttural, something that vibrated in your bones. Earl dropped the gun and ran so fast he left his shoes on the pavement. That same night it visited another yard. The homeowner, an old veteran, passed quietly before morning. The fear got heavier, then came the night it came from my house. I was awake,
Couldn't sleep anyway, and I saw it cross the street and hop my chain-link fence like it weighed nothing. My mother had been battling cancer for months, weak and bedridden. The thing turned and walked straight toward the side of the house where my parents' bedroom window was. Something snapped in me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. I grabbed the machete I keep by the back door, burst outside and started screaming every curse I knew. The devil stopped, turned, and screamed back, a sound like tearing metal mixed with a dying animal. I raised the blade, ready to charge. It stared at me for a long second, then spun, cleared the fence in one leap and vanished into the dark. We never saw it again, at least not in that shape. My mother passed last week peaceful, the doctor said, just slipped away. Maybe the devil came that night and I chased it off. Maybe it came back later in a form none of us could see, I don't know. But if you live in Beckley, or any small town where the woods touch the streets, listen close on quiet nights, heavy footsteps scratching at the siding, a long rasping breath outside your window. If the Beckley devil decides it's your time, he'll come for you. Host, that's the Beckley devil. A visitor in the night that doesn't break in. It just lets death in. If this one left you checking the locks twice, do me a solid, hit that like button, drop a quick review if you can. And most important, subscribe so the next story slips into your feed without warning. Share it with someone who lives close to the woods. We'll be back soon with more shadows and dust. Until next time, keep an ear on the night.
Welcome back to Sundust Short Horror Stories, the podcast where we unearth true tales of terror from the past. Short, chilling stories that linger long after the lights go out. I'm your host, and tonight's episode comes from a listener whose grandfather carried a haunting memory from his childhood in the 1930s. It's a reminder that danger can hide in the most innocent places, like a handful of dirt by the river. Settle in as we share, watch out for the worms. My grandfather lived a fascinating life, full of stories that stuck with him forever. This one, though, it haunted him the most. He was about 7 years old at the time, which would place it around 1930, deep in the Great Depression. He and his friends were poor coal mining kids from the hills, family scraping by in the shadow of the mines, with little money for anything extra. One sunny afternoon, a group of them headed to the nearby river for some fishing. The water wasn't too deep, but it rushed fast over small rapids, bubbling and sparkling under the trees. No store-bought gear for these boys. They fashioned homemade poles from branches and string and bait. They dug their own worms from the damp riverbank soil. Childhood fishing experiences and robins. They spread out along the edge, dropping their gear and plunging their small hands into the cool, rich dirt. One of the older boys had brought along his little brother, just 5 years old, eager to help, digging enthusiastically with the rest. After a while, the little one came running over, proud as could be, clutching a handful of tiny, wriggling worms. But he was whining, tugging at his fingers. "They're biting me," he complained, holding them out to his brother. The older boy leaned in for a closer look, and his face went pale. Those weren't worms at all. They were baby snakes, small, slender newborns that must have blended perfectly with the earthworms in the soil. Panic erupted. The tiny snakes had already bitten the boy's hands multiple times in his tight grip. Back then, far from any hospital and with no quick way to get help, there was nothing they could do. Tragically, the 5-year-old collapsed right there on the riverbank and died before anyone could save him. Juvenile copperhead, snake high-res, stock photography, and images alamy. My grandfather remembered it vividly his whole life, the screams, the helplessness, the way the day turned from excitement to horror in an instant. It scarred him deeply. A stark lesson from a time when kids roamed wild and nature didn't forgive mistakes. Many believe baby venomous snakes like young copperheads common in those Appalachian regions pack a more concentrated venom than adults, making their bites especially deadly for a small child. It must have terrified him watching his friend's little brother slip away over something so innocent as digging for bait. So heed the warning my grandfather passed down: be careful out there. Watch closely what you pick up from the dirt. And if you're too young, always bring older folks along when you go fishing. A simple childhood adventure turned deadly. Proof that the scariest stories often hide in everyday life. Thanks to our listener for sharing this piece of family history. If this tale made you double-check the ground next time you're outdoors, hit that like button. Subscribe to Sundust Short Horror Stories for more true chills each week, and leave a review. It helps us dig up even darker gems. Share your own family horror stories in the comments. You might hear them here next. Until the shadows creep in again, stay safe out there.
Welcome to Sundust Horror Stories, where shadows speak and the trees remember. Tonight's tale, The Missing, a quiet confession from the woods that turns deadly. Listener discretion advised. Settle in. If you dare, The Missing. I've always loved the woods, not in the way most people do, posting selfies on scenic overlooks or bragging about summits on social media. No, my love is deeper, quieter, obsessive, some might say. Sick, if they knew the truth. It started innocently enough. Years ago, I read about those cases, the ones that baffle rangers and haunt families. Hundreds disappear in national forests and state parks every year. Experienced hunters, vanishing mid-stride families where one member wanders off for a quick bathroom break and is simply gone. No screams, no signs of struggle, no tracks leading away. Sometimes bodies turn up miles from where they should be, in places searched a dozen times over. Confused survivors babble about bright lights piercing the canopy or an unnatural silence that swallows all sound. I know why that happens. I wasn't always part of it. My first time was accidental. I was hiking a remote trail in a northern wilderness area, alone. As always, mid-afternoon, the light shifted, the birds stopped singing. Then came the hum, low and vibrating in my bones, like the forest itself was tuning to a new frequency. I looked up. A disk of polished silver hovered silently above the treetops, no bigger than a house, but impossibly smooth, reflecting the pines in warped perfection. A beam of pale blue light descended, soft at first, like moonlight made solid. It touched me, and everything went weightless. No fear, just a profound calm, as if I'd been waiting for this my whole life. They took me aboard. Up close, they're not the monsters from movies, tall, slender, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that hold galaxies. They didn't speak aloud, but thoughts flooded my mind. Curiosity, not malice, probes, examinations, painless, clinical. They studied me like I'd study a rare insect, hours passed or days. Time blurs up there. When they returned me, it was night. I was miles from my starting point, barefoot, clothes scattered like breadcrumbs, but something had changed. They left a gift or a curse, a signal I can call them now, a subtle pulse from a device implanted somewhere deep, activated by will alone. That's when the hobby began. I scout patterns, midweek trails, off-season parks, solitary hikers seeking escape, breakups, midlife crisis, the grieving people no one checks on for days. Perfect. I blend in, park my truck, lace up boots, sling an empty pack, greet them with a nod, a casual, beautiful day, huh? They smile, earbuds in, defenses down. I wait for the moment, a bend in the trail, a scenic pull-off, a quick step into the brush, then I signal. The ship descends without a sound, cloaked until the last second. The beam locks, I'm in place, phones drop, eyes widen in that delicious instant of realization. They're so fragile, heart racing, breath catching as the light lifts them. The forest falls utterly silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. I guide the process, sometimes herding them into the beam if they resist. Most don't. The calm takes them too. Afterward, clean up is simple, scatter gear, brush away prints. By the time dogs and helicopters arrive, I'm home, sipping coffee, watching the news. Last week was my favorite yet mid-30s guy, fresh off a divorce, posted on forums about needing solitude to clear his head. He chose a quiet state park, weekday, no cell service, deep in. I was there first, waiting on a log. Like any fellow hiker, we chatted, trails, weather, the usual. He mentioned a breakup, I nodded sympathetically. He stopped for a photo at an overlook, perfect. The hum started faint, he looked up, frowning, "You hear that?" I smiled, signaled. The ship materialized, beam pinning a mid-turn. His pack slipped from his shoulder. For a split second our eyes met, pure terror in his. Then he was gone, ascending into the light. The forest exhaled as the ship vanished. I collected his things, hiked out whistling. They don't hurt them, mostly experiments, samples, observations. Some come back, drop miles away, barefoot and babbling, adding to the legends, others don't. That's my story so far. But the woods are calling again. Patterns shifted, more solos fleeing the holidays, seeking peace in the pines. If you're listening to this alone on a quiet trail, headphones in, lost in thought, listen for the hum, and please, come to the woods alone. Pleasant dreams, or whatever waits in the light above the trees. This has been Sundust Horror Stories. Good night.